Welcome to this very special Moments with Mike, as we have our pastor and my friend, Pastor Ryan, here today, poised on the brink of taking his 3-month sabbatical. And you have been about this for a long time, because when we kind of redid the HR handbook for the church, and I brought the whole idea along with another one of the executive team about a sabbatical. You were supportive of that. Thank you for that. But I went to the council and tried to sell them on it, and we've had 3 of our pastors go on sabbatical, and now you're number 4. You're back in cleanup. And I just thought it would be interesting for you to tell our congregation, how did you discern it was the right time for you to take a sabbatical right now, in the midst of, now we're coming out of this pandemic, but help us with that.
Great question, Mike. You know, I can tell you in the other years, I felt like it wasn't the right time. That part felt really clear. I think I was a little bit watching and listening and trying to discern what would be a right season, realizing every year there's something new that's coming. I think that was part of why each year wasn't quite right. There was just something new on the docket that I felt like needed a little extra leadership energy, and didn't feel like it was the time. But I think maybe coming in the middle of this COVID season, as we were coming through it, I began to sense something shifted a little bit inside. Like there's a little more openness to this being the right season. And the more that we pressed into it, the more we began to see that, yes, it seemed like the Lord was inviting us into sabbatical. I certainly wasn't pushing for one. I felt more like, okay, this is what I want for you now as you're starting to move into this next. So I think that's probably the best description. It felt like an invitation. It didn't feel like something I was trying to get to.
You didn't think that we as a staff were like shoving you out the door,
no,
right?
There may be a little bit of that, but
not from me.
No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, that's probably the best way to describe it.
You used the word, the plural pronoun we. How involved was your family in this discussion?
Well, my wife's involved in every big decision that we're making. I think she is great at discerning things as well. She's very aware of maybe like a congregational ethos and where people are at and how things are feeling. And so, I bounced a lot of things off of her, and we listened together. And I could see she was not as concerned with this one, which was kind of falling in line with what I felt like this growing invitation. So, listening and kind of gathering where she was at and hearing it, and where I'm at, certainly sabbatical, it's not exactly the same. It's not both of us taking a sabbatical. There's certain responsibilities that she's carrying that she's going to continue carrying through the season. But from the church side, yeah, it's a planning thing. It took both of us to kind of strategize a little bit. We're still asking questions about it, like how do we want May to play out, and how do we want June to play out, and how do we want July to play out? And I hate trying to figure out calendars and schedules, and I certainly cannot plan anything without those things. So those pieces, I need my bride.
Right.
I need her to sit down with me and say, here's a week that you could do this. Here's some time for that. Have you considered? So she does great at helping.
That's great. Typically, for a long time, mainline denominations have had in their HR handbooks the idea of a sabbatical. Ours is after 7 years. You're now looking at 18 years since you planted the bridge, or somewhere in that general time frame. I think it's important for people to understand that a sabbatical is really not just about rest, although that's very important. It's not even about necessarily recreation, about seeing God in creation and taking great joy in that, but it's about reflection. And it's work. It's just different kinds of work. So what are your expectations about the work of your own sabbatical? What will you be doing?
Eating a lot of pizza. And no, I'm just kidding.
That would be different from your regular life.
Totally, yes. And pasta. Some of the work that's lined up are, books I've wanted to dive into for a while that I haven't really had the time. There's some work I've been working on in preparation with a spiritual director on uh, different listening, different ways to connect with the Lord in this season, and kind of even doing some of the first steps of what kinds of things do I feel like He wants to begin to talk to me about in the sabbatical. So a lot of it's been posture work that I think will pay a lot of fruit in how I spend time with Him. What kinds of things I'm beginning to kind of flood the mind and the heart with, as far as books and resources. Another part of the work, though, for me in this season is reorienting. That's the word I've been using. It's the best one I have because it starts with an R and it fits the pattern of re. But
Another thing that I've kind
yes, I
of
know.
dropped into your life,
From
right?
you.
Alliteration.
It's gotta be. Boo, boo, boo. But in reorienting, I realized that we're on the precipice of another season. So with one out of the house and one 4 years, 3.5 years away from being out of the house, we're preparing for the next, long haul part of our season. And I don't know if everybody asks the question. I certainly have been asking the question, what does this next season look like? How do you want me to run? How hard do you want me to run? What kinds of gifts and callings that in this next season do you want to highlight and want me to invest in? Do you want me to prepare? Is there a part of skill sets that you want me to be developing in this next 3 years to get ready for?
Right.
Being an empty nester and running hard with my bride. So anyway, those are some questions I'm hoping for some good answers to. But I also want to play hard. There's a part of me, there are things I love, and I can shelve those as I do ministry and put them on a side for a while. But I love to dive. I love to hike. I love to camp. I love to fish. There's just ways I love to connect with the Lord, and those times feel really rushed
Right.
and very, very hard to find. So part of the work is giving some attention to that too. I'm hoping
Right.
for some neat moments.
That's great. You referenced a spiritual director, and in our handbook, we do have a process by which people go through so that they are adequately prepared for their sabbatical. And one of those is meeting with somebody who's designated. I know for one of our pastors, they met with me, but the other two that have gone met with people outside of our pastoral community, and that's what you've chosen to do too. What do you see the role of a spiritual director in this process as doing and or meaning for you?
Well, let me just say there might be a couple of people I meet with outside of this during the sabbatical. One from more of a kind of a mentorship kind of role who kind of put my sabbatical plan in front of them, let them ask me some questions and maybe even recommend certain reading materials for the kinds of things I was looking for. And I'll be connecting again with that mentor. But the spiritual director's role is it's like in our learning circle conversation, we talk about hearing what God's saying in this. How is the Lord wanting to talk with me and meet with me in this? One of the values I've already been gaining from it is new tools for how I spend the time with Him.
Right.
Like centered prayer. That's been a big part. I think there's a little recovery of my desire for how Lectio Divina works for me with journaling again and my times in the Word. So some of those things, bringing those back up, but certainly with a regular rhythm of meeting, connecting, making sure I'm unpacking what I'm hearing. She's recommended certain things that I keep saying that she says, why don't you pay attention to that and maybe journal on that? And that's been super helpful for me. If you're anything like me, it helps when people ask you good questions.
Right.
Because they get you thinking about things. And so I think that's a big part.
That's great. Last question, my friend. How might our congregation bless and or encourage you in this process? Now, we saw that when we had the chance to pray over you, and we asked people to join into that and so forth. And I know that will continue to be a regular rhythm of our staff, and people, when we gather together, will be praying for you and Johanna and the boys and so forth. But is there a specific that comes to mind about how you would benefit by a specific prayer or the specific blessing and or encouragement of our congregation during this time?
Honestly, my greatest care is the church body and body life. It's my greatest care. So if I knew our church understood the significance of their role in welcoming newer people to our congregation, in caring for one another, in praying for and supporting our staff as a whole, in rallying together to the mission of the church, that's what brings a lot of comfort to my heart. I would covet any prayer, and always when I'm on and not on sabbatical, for us personally, for our family. But that's the thing that gets my heart. Like if our church said, yes, our pastor's on sabbatical, but while he's away, we're going to dive fully into caring for one another and caring for this charge God's given us of a fellowship and a mission and a responsibility, so that even in coming back, the stories I'm hearing are the stories of how we took care of this person and that person got cared for, and this one was greeted, and these new relationships formed, and and we, cared for the city of Rancho Santa Margarita the way God's called us to. And anyway, that to me, that would bless me.
Amen.
More than anything.
We'll make sure we do the best that we can about continuing to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. And that's exactly what you just talked about. Are we a welcoming community? Are we people using our gifts and talents to bless other people and take care of the needs that come up and look to the city needs? And I know that's a heartbeat that you have, and I'm sure that challenge will be accepted and warmly received and acted upon. So thank you for my time with you today, and I know this is going to be a blessing to our congregation as they get to hear from you as you are poised to begin this season, and I hope it's a rich and an amazing time of growth and communion with you and Jesus.
Thank you, Mike.
Love you, brother.
Love you, buddy.